My name is Alec Gioseffi. I'm the farm manager and partner here at IronBound Farm in Hunterdon County, New Jersey. Just to give you a background of what our farm consists of, we're a 108-acre property. We're a diversified operation that has 10 acres of dwarfed apple trees for cider production. We have 12 acres of annual vegetables. We have half an acre of covered low tunnels and high tunnels for year-round production. We have a plethora of different types of birds that we graze in our silvopastured orchard that we just put in this past season. And we do also a bunch of perennial infusion berries and fruits to get also mixed into our cider. On the farm we have a tasting room, so we kind of have a restaurant that runs half of the week seasonally. So a lot of the produce that we're producing is for that outlet directly on site, and as well as making value-added food products that we sell through our kitchen and through our on-site farm store. We have a 100-member CSA that we started on this property this year. We also sell to a farmer's market in Philadelphia, and we work with a few large wholesale distributors in the New York area, and also another wholesale delivery for restaurants in central New Jersey that services 150 restaurants in the tri-state area. Right behind us is our early spring field where we have beets, Swiss chard, kale, collards, all of our cole crops, and some radishes and carrots. This is one of our 4 fields that we plant in like a block row crop system. As I mentioned before, we also have 15 acres of silvopastured orchard with apples in it, and there our trees are planted on a 30-foot center, so we can alley crop annual crops between that, like sweet potatoes, winter squash, potatoes, and melons. And then we also have another section of that where we rotate meat birds through. So we have about 600 broiler chickens that we do every year, as well as 250 turkeys that we move through that system as well. So right now we're in our silvopastured orchard. So we have about 30 different varieties of cider apple trees, dessert apple trees, and crab apple trees that are 30 feet away from each other. In between, we move our meat birds and turkeys in between, and that will be in rotation with alley cropping, annual crops, or some perennial crops in the future. So this is one of our 3 mobile range coops that we constructed this past winter. It's basically a 20-foot by 36-foot long Gothic greenhouse built on skids that you can drag with a truck or a tractor forward each day. So we brooded them in this for about a month until it kind of warmed up a bit and we were able to move them, and we just started moving them about 2 weeks ago. So every day we move them about a day. Now that it's nearly July, we're probably going to start moving them twice a day so we can maintain that there's adequate pasture for them to be eating, and we're not depositing too much nitrogen and fertilizer into the soil. So you can see the succession of how the grass further away from us is a bit taller, and as we move closer to the coop, you can see where they were yesterday, where they've pretty much eaten everything and left a nice mat of manure as a deposit on the soil. Also, one thing, now that we're going through all of this, we're seeing that some of the pasture that we seeded last year is a bit patchy. So I think that we're actually going to start broadcasting some more seed for the pasture behind the chickens, just to make sure that we get adequate cover for the future. So this is a mixture of more heritage-based, commercially bred chickens that we get from Moyer's Hatchery in Pennsylvania. So I'm not really sure what the actual crosses are, but they take about another 15 days to maturity, and they also have not a huge focus on the breast size. So a lot of the conventionally bred white chickens are more about the white meat. Being that all of these chickens are actually just going to be turned into food that we're selling at our tasting room on the property, our chefs here prefer the dark meat over the white meat, especially because one of our signature dishes we call a cider canned chicken. So we take a whole chicken and then we put it on our mother fire, which is a giant outdoor fire-based cooking apparatus, and then we just take the whole chicken, stick it on a can of our hard cider, and then we just baste it with butter and an herb sachet, and it's absolutely delicious. And we found that the dark meat does much better with that sort of cooking than a chicken that is mostly white meat. This is what we call our chef's terrace. This is our main outdoor seating area for our tasting room. So we have planted a mixture of culinary herbs, medicinals, flowers, and natives in this area, as well as a lot of our infusion fruits that we grow that gets mixed into the cider. So it's kind of been a really good showcase and talking point when we have events and workshops here, because we can have our chefs be cooking over the fire with all the food that's being produced. We can have our cider maker out here making cocktails, and then the guests can come and forage some herbs that they can then garnish on their food or in their cocktails. So it's been a really fun integrated experience that we've been able to create on our farm. This is our mother fire on the farm. This is where most of our food is prepared for our restaurant, or tasting room rather. So this is where in the cavity of this giant grill is where we burn all of our wood, and then we take all of the coals and embers out, and then we can move it to one side, that's a grill, the other side is a plancha, and then we also have all these hooks and things that we could hang all of the vegetables from, or meat. Then right here we have a giant pit and a spit that we can put whole animals on. Beneath this metal flooring is basically a giant oven, so we can actually do baked goods and pastries and bread and all that sort of stuff down there. So if you have any way to cook anything over open fire, you can pretty much do it all here. So it's been a lot of fun, and for me being a chef before I got into farming, it's like my dream to be able to grow food in the morning and be a farmer, and then put on a chef's coat in the evening and serve customers and really have a full farm to table experience on site, which has been really awesome. One of the cool things about the mother fire is how modular it is with what you could do depending on what you're cooking. So these are two little pizza ovens that we made. This past weekend, it was the first weekend we were allowed to open up and serve food again with COVID. However, there's lots of restrictions of what we can do and how we can actually serve the food. So we limited our menu just to 4 different types of pizza that are all featuring our meat and vegetables that are produced on site. So we do flatbreads, and then we're doing like a few things with chicken and like just grilled vegetables that we're pulling off the farm right now. But yeah, then these are like hooks that you can hang full pieces of meat from, or we have baskets like this that you can pierce onions through. It's just a lot of fun, and yeah, cooking on fire is definitely the way to go, and cooking on coals is even better. So we're in one of our high tunnels that we have on the farm here, where we do year-round production. One thing that we're really fortunate to have about this high tunnel is that it's completely climate controlled, and we have heat in here. So in the winter time, we crank the thermostat to be just above freezing. So we can pretty much guarantee that it's never going to go below 32 degrees, which allows us to have more success with some of the greens that we're planting in the winter time for an early spring harvest. Right now, as you can see, there's tons of tomatoes and cucumbers in here. So with this, we put down landscape fabric in between to help keep the soil warm and not have to deal with any weed issues that are coming up that we have to manage in the middle of the summer. Another reason that we put this down here is that being that we plant tomatoes frequently in here, when we're clearing out the crop in the end of the season, it makes it really easy to remove all of the prunings and the plant debris, so we could get it out of the greenhouse if there happen to be any sort of disease issues. So that's worked out really well for us. In between the rows of fabric, we put straw mulch again around all of the tomatoes, just to help insulate the soil a little bit better. And underneath that, there's about 2 runs of drip tape as well. In this greenhouse specifically, we don't drive any tractors in here, so we use a BCS for any sort of light surface tillage, or we use more market garden style tools like a broad fork, the tilther, and things like that. So there's not really any sort of deep tillage that's happening in these structures at all. This year, what we're experimenting with the tomatoes is the whole lower and lean system, as you can see. We're getting to the point actually where this week is going to be the first lowering and leaning that we're going to do. So what we've done in the past was a 2-liter system, and then just by the end of the summer, the plants are hitting the plastic and you need to use a ladder to every single time you're harvesting. It's super labor intensive. So when we're lowering and leaning, we pretty much just take this hook off, and then we'll actually lower the plant a little bit and loosen it about 1 or 2 turns, and then we'll hook it back on and then slide it down in the direction that we determine that we're going to be going. And then we do that for every plant. Maybe this one I'll just lower once, and then we just lower it and lean it. Because by the time the season's over, the plant gets to be about, I mean, depending for the cherry tomatoes, sometimes even up to 20, 25 feet long. So where the plant was actually planted here, the top of it by the middle of September will be about 20 feet down in that direction. And then once we do this also, we don't want to have any of the leaves touching the ground. So we'll pretty much bottom all of the leaves and just leave a vine so we have nice airflow and circulation at the bottom of the plant. And it works out great with the cucumbers. I don't know if I would do it again next year because the cucumber plants have just been doing so well this year that the tendrils keep connecting to the strings next to them, and it just makes moving them a little bit more work. So I think that we're going to try using some hordenova netting and just do a traditional trellis system next year in the high tunnel. You can see how compaction is a real thing. So like when we built this last fall, where the whole front of the tunnel was actually an old like farm lane, but we wanted to have a 150-foot long tunnel. So this whole front, we did the same prep, but you can see how much smaller and stunted the plants are up here. So here we're gonna have to really do a good broad forking, or potentially like add some more topsoil. We're not really sure what we're gonna do to strategize having better productivity in the front of the tunnel. So as you can see right here, I'm standing in the ditch part of a swale. So last year we put in 3 giant swales across our entire property that are about 6,000 feet long, and there's 3 of them 225 feet spaced away from each other. So what this does is when we have a heavy rain event, it allows the water to hit this ditch and spread out across the soil profile, and it sits for a short period of time and then repercolates into the soil across the whole soil horizon, instead of just having it run off that's going from the highest point to the lowest point as quick as possible. Right after we planted this, we seeded it with a mixture of warm season native grasses, a bunch of different flowers for pollination like rudbeckia, there's some milkweeds, and then some more traditional cover crops like rye and oats and triticale and things like that that you can see here. And we're not really going to mow this at all. We're just kind of let it do its own thing and kind of just rehabitate itself into this environment.